All right, so it's 1 o'clock, so let's get started. So, welcome to the July Nutrition Support Monthly Call. My name is Misty Woods, and I'll be leading today's call. So, today's agenda, we're going to go over summer EBT, some reminders, some seamless summer reminders, final rule reminders, some equipment grant reminders. We're going to go over the most recent memos that have been posted to the website, and then we're going to go over some upcoming trainings. So let's briefly go over some of the summer EBT information that we have. As a reminder, we will not be answering summer EBT questions on this call. We do have summer EBT calls that are every Thursday that you can get your questions answered, or you can email the Child Nutrition Programs at la.gov, and we'll go over that on the next slide. So, although DCFS is the coordinating agency for summer EBT, LDOE will continue working with and supporting LEAs and data managers through the process of submitting the data needed to DCFS. So please remember that staff at LDOE here are prohibited in state law from viewing student PPI. I'm sorry, PII. Therefore, we will be limited in the means and methods that we're able to support. We will not be able to view those spreadsheets that contain personally identifiable information for students. So, like I just previously said, Department of Education has been hosting weekly calls for data managers, and these calls are held weekly to try to help answer questions and provide technical assistance throughout the summer. Some meetings will have formal information to share, while others will simply operate like office hours where you can attend to ask questions. However, please note that the next call will be held on Thursday, July 11th, as there will be no call on tomorrow, July 4th. The link to register for this summer EBT calls is on this slide. And then once you register, you should be able to download the calendar invite for all of the meetings. This information was also sent out via email to the data managers. And however, if they do need a link, they can email the Child Nutrition Programs at la.gov, and we'll be happy to share the link with you. So on this slide is the Sunbucks contact information with links to each. So if you have the programmatic questions, you can email the general child nutrition email address. If you have any technical questions related to the portal, there's a DCFS support email address that you can send emails to. If they need portal access, there's a place for data managers that have a My LA account. There's also a Sunbucks toolbox, and then there's also a link to the actual portal. So the spreadsheet that everybody keeps referring to is due into Portal by 7/19 of 2024. So on July 19th, that needs to be submitted. And it's for reason the two purposes is the full complete roster of May 2024, and it's the indicators for each individual child of eligibility status. So JCampus uploads from 6/24 to 6/27. So any uploads generated from JCampus between Monday, June 24th and Thursday, June 27th will need to be replaced. An email was sent out to the uploader asking if JCampus was used. If yes, they'll be wiping out those files. They can be uploaded or re-uploaded, I should say. We will send out a communication once LEAs can re-upload. And if we don't hear from LEAs by July 9th, the files will automatically be removed and require a new upload. So check with your data managers about this. So we've added some frequently asked questions about summer EBT. So one of them is, I'm a CEP school. Do I still need to upload a spreadsheet? And the answer is yes. So under summer EBT, all students must qualify for benefits individually. All schools participating in National School Lunch must submit a full enrollment for the month of May 2024. In addition to individually identifying each student as a Y, meaning documentation on file to support their eligibility, or an N, meaning no documentation on file. Another question is that they received is my 4-year-old student didn't receive money on his SNAP card. Why? And the answer to that is that only students born between August 15th, 2005 and July 1st, 2018 received streamlined benefits on their already existing SNAP cards. So another frequently asked question is, can children enrolled at a national school lunch school breakfast schools who are older or younger than the age of school attendance, meaning their date of birth listed on the previous slide, participate in summer EBT? And the answer to that is yes. Children of any age who are enrolled in National School Lunch and Breakfast participating schools are eligible to participate in summer EBT if they are categorically eligible or reside in a household with an income level at or below the 185% of the federal poverty level and complete a National School Lunch Breakfast application or summer EBT application. And this means students born outside of the date range above cannot be streamlined certified. Another question is, how will households know if they're eligible for benefits? So DCFS will roll out summer EBT benefits in phases. So the first phase is going to be the streamlined certified SNAP recipients. So households will receive the letter notifying them of the eligible children in the household and that the benefit has been uploaded to their current card. Phase two is a streamlined certification for TANF and Medicaid benefits, and those households will also receive a letter notifying them of their eligibility and follow with a summer EBT Sunbucks card. And after this process is complete, benefits based on the file upload from LEAs to include all children who qualify for free or reduced price meals during school year 2024. These students will receive a letter notifying them of their eligibility and a date of the card issuance. And these students are noted as a Y eligible in the spreadsheet. And then finally, all children who did not receive notification of eligibility through the first two phases will then have an opportunity to actually apply for the summer EBT Sunbucks benefits through the NutriLink online application in August. Within a few weeks of the application, households should receive a letter notifying them of eligibility. Another question is, will students receive a new EBT card? So families of those streamlined certified children who receive SNAP during the 2024 school year will see their Sunbucks benefits loaded onto their existing SNAP EBT card in phase one. All other Sunbucks eligible children, including those streamlined certified in phase two and those who apply in phase three, will receive their benefits on a new EBT card. The new EBT cards are mailed to the address on file for the child with their Medicaid or TANF case or with their school LEA. Students older or younger than the age of education must have their enrollment confirmed through the LEA's enrollment and eligibility spreadsheet and therefore will receive a new card. So, for example, a 4-year-old student who was on SNAP will not be eligible for streamlined certification and benefit issuance. Therefore, either the LEA must designate the student as a Y or yes eligible on the spreadsheet submitted to DCFS, or the student must be determined income eligible through summer EBT application. Next question, why do we need to indicate if all enrolled children are eligible for benefits with a Y or an N in the spreadsheet submitted to DCFS through the portal? So a Y or yes indicates that the LEA has documentation of number one, an eligible free or reduced meal application at a non-CEP school. Number two, a Head Start student. Number three, a SNAP recipient. Number four, extended direct certification. Number five, foster. Number six, homeless. Number seven, migrant. Number eight, Medicaid free. Number nine, Medicaid reduced. Or number 10, TANF-FITAP kinship. An N or a no indicates that number one, they're ineligible on a free or reduced meal application at a non CEP school, or number two, no documentation in the child's eligibility. The children identified by DCFS will be streamlined certified with or without a Y on the spreadsheet if they meet the age range requirements. Those will specifically be students on SNAP, Medicaid, or TANF. However, here are a few examples of circumstances where children would not receive benefits if not identified as eligible on the enrollment spreadsheet. Extended benefits, so the siblings of the students on the files, those siblings would then only qualify if they put in an eligible summer EBT application through Nutrilink. DCFS also will not be receiving source data for children who qualify through homeless, migrant, runaway, foster, or Head Start. This will need to be identified on the spreadsheet through a Y, or the child will have to qualify through income via the summer EBT application. And further, any child who is not within the age range of streamlined certification will not receive streamlined benefits. They will need to qualify through a Y or through the summer EBT application. So, for example, Head Start students will only be identified through the spreadsheet. Head Start is not directly certification data DCFS will have access to, and not all Head Start students attend NSLP schools, and those children will likely not meet the age requirements for streamlined certification. So now that we've been through all of summer EBT, the latest information, I highly recommend that for those data managers or anybody who deals with summer EBT to please log on to those weekly calls on Thursdays. I believe they're at 11 a.m. Or you can email the child nutrition programs at la.gov. Okay, so now let's move on to some seamless summer option reminders. So SFAs that are operating Seamless Summer in July will need to complete the 24-25 application once it's available. Please contact the state agency if you are planning to operate into July for instructions. You can email Chandra Scott and she'll be more than happy to assist you. Her email address is on this slide as well as her phone number. So let's talk about reimbursement for SSO meals, as we've been getting a few questions. If the site normally receives severe need breakfast or the menu certification, the 8 cent certification, which everybody does, then these rates will continue during SSO operations. During the months of May and June, sponsors will receive the current school year's reimbursement rate. But during the month of July, if you're operating, sponsors will receive the new school year reimbursement rates, which we have still not received from USDA yet. The same claiming process is completed for SSO as done throughout the academic school year. Under the green SFS tab, users will access the claims feature that they normally do for NSLP and school breakfast. However, the SSO meal count data is reported under a separate line item. So the SSO data will appear in light green and displayed below the SFS line items. And on this slide is an example of how it's displayed on the claims page. So again, like I said before, that meal data for SSO appears in light green for each site. The following reported per claim period, you need to know the max number of free eligibles, the number of operating days, the total number of reimbursable meals served by type for the claim period, and then if there's any other meals that are not claimed, such as your non-program and adult meals. The same claim deadlines apply for SSO claims as for any other CMP claims filed. So sponsors should aim to submit their claims by the 10th of the month following that claim period. And the final deadline to actually submit is the 60th calendar day following the claim period. So, on today's call, we're going to go over some final rule reminders that became effective July 1, 2024. But if you want more detailed information, you can refer back to the May monthly call recording and slides because we went into more detail where there are some things that go into effect in 2025, 2026, and beyond. But today, we're just going to focus on the ones that became effective on July 1. So here is several resources that are linked on this slide. Again, as of April 25th of 2024 is whenever the final rule had been published. And it go alongs with the goals of the dietary guidelines for the 2020-2025. And that I have them linked on here so that at any time you need to refer back to them, you could just click on the links. So first, let's talk about the menu planning flexibilities. These, like I said, took place July 1, 2024, meaning that program operators can use them this school year. However, program operators are not required to make any changes to their menus to comply with these provisions. They just provide more flexibility for operators who wish to use them. So, grain and meat alternates at school breakfast. So, the final rule creates a combined grains and meat alternates meal component at school breakfast. It also removes the requirement for schools to offer grain each day at breakfast. So, under this final rule, schools may choose to offer grains, meat alternates, or a combination of both to meet the combined component requirement. The minimum daily requirement of 1 ounce equivalent and minimum weekly requirements of 7 to 9 ounce equivalents, depending on the age grade group, remains the same. Schools are not required to make any changes to menus under this provision. This changes makes it easier for schools to offer protein-rich foods like eggs, cheese, and yogurt at breakfast. And on this slide, I linked to resources to the meat alternates and grain at breakfast section of the final rule. So substituting vegetables and fruits at school breakfast. So the final rule continues to allow schools to substitute vegetables for fruits at school breakfast and simplifies the vegetable variety requirement. Schools that choose to substitute vegetables for fruits once a week may offer any vegetable, including a starchy vegetable. But schools that choose to substitute vegetables for fruits more than once a week must offer vegetables from at least two different subgroups. And as a reminder, the vegetable subgroups include dark green, red orange, beans, peas, and lentils, starchy, and other vegetables. An important note for 24-25 school year, though, is that the 2024 Consolidated Appropriations Act passed by Congress in March of 2024 allows schools to offer any vegetables in plates of fruits at breakfast with no subgroup variety, and this is only in place for 24-25 school year. And some resources that I have linked on this slide is that Consolidated Appropriations Act and substituting vegetables for fruit at breakfast, that section of the final rule. So nuts and seeds. So the final rule allows nuts and seeds to credit for the full meat alternate component in all child nutrition program and meals. This change removes the 50% crediting limit previously in place for nuts and seeds at breakfast, lunch, and supper. So, when offering nuts and seeds, child nutrition program operators may offer them to meet the full meat alternate component, but are not required to. Operators that choose to offer nuts and seeds may offer those nuts and seeds towards only a portion of the component alongside another meat alternate. And on this slide, I have the resources linked. I have the nuts and seeds section of the final rule. I have a link about reducing the risk of choking in young children at meal times. And then also I have a web page for food allergies. Beans, peas, and lentils at school lunch. So the final rule gives schools the option to count beans, peas, and lentils offered as a meat alternate at lunch towards the weekly beans, peas, and lentils vegetable subgroup requirement. And under this option, as with the prior standard, schools would determine which overall meal component the beans, peas, and lentils would count towards, either the vegetable meal component or the meat alternate meal component. Beans, peas, and lentils offered as a meat alternate would not count towards the daily or weekly vegetable meal component requirements. Schools using this option will be required to offer more vegetables to meet the daily and weekly vegetable meal component requirements. And on this slide, the resources is the beans, peas, and lentils at lunch section of the final rule. Competitive foods, the bean dip exemption. So the final rule exempts bean dip, including hummus, from the total fat standard in Smart Snack regulations. For the purposes of the Smart Snack standards, bean dip means a spread made from ground pulses, meaning beans, peas, or lentils, along with one or more of the optional ingredients listed in the regulation. Bean dips must continue to meet all other Smart Snack standards in order to be sold to students on campus during the school day. And on this slide, I have the following resources linked. I have the bean dip exemption section of the final rule, the definition of the bean dip in the final rule, and the tools for schools focusing on Smart Snacks webpage. So now we're going to discuss the administrative and operational changes in the final rule that are effective as of July 1. So the professional standards hiring exception. So the final rule allows state agency discretion to approve the hiring of an individual to serve as a school nutrition program director in a medium or large local educational agency for individuals who have 10 or more years of school nutrition program experience but do not hold a bachelor's or associate's degree. Directors hired under this exception must have a high school diploma or GED in addition to 10 or more years of school nutrition program experience. And then on this slide, I have the resources that are linked, the professional standards section of the final rule, and then the professional standards webpage. Meal modification. So the final rule explains in regulation that state licensed healthcare professionals may write medical statements to request modifications on behalf of the child or adult participants with disabilities in the school meals program and the child and adult care food program. The final rule also defines a state licensed healthcare professional as an individual authorized to write medical prescriptions under state law consistent with the definition previously provided in USDA policy guidance. The requirement to accept medical statements from a state licensed healthcare professional has been in effect for some time through USDA policy guidance, and this rule incorporates that requirement into regulations. The final rule also expands the authority to submit medical statements on behalf of participants with disabilities to registered dietitians. The requirement to accept medical statement from registered dietitians must be implemented by July 1 of 2025 for the National School Lunch Program and the School Breakfast Program, and by October 1st, 2025 for the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And then the link on this slide is the resource for the meal modification section of the final rule. Geographic preference option expansion. So the final rule expands the geographic preference allowing option, by allowing child nutrition program operators to use local as a product specification for unprocessed, locally grown, raised, and caught foods in child nutrition programs. Procurement specifications are a written description of the product or service that the vendor must meet to be considered responsive. This change may help increase the purchase of local foods by child nutrition program operators and ease procurement challenges for operators interested in sourcing local foods. And the resources on this slide that are linked is the geographic preference expansion that's related to the final rule, and then also the geographic preference section of the final rule. Next up is the Buy American, the limited exceptions. So the final rule codifies existing limited exceptions to the Buy American requirements in regulation and also allows school food authorities to use an exemption list. So under the final rule, the exceptions apply when the product is listed on the Federal Acquisitions Regulations or FAR, the non-available articles list, and or is not produced or manufactured in the US in sufficient and reasonably available quantities of satisfactory quality. Or competitive bids reveal that the cost of the US product are significantly higher than the non-domestic product. So the readily available list of exempt items is expected to help reduce the administrative burden associated with documenting exceptions. So on this slide, I have the following resources linked. I have the Buy Americans provisions that are related to the final rule. I have the Buy American section of the final rule. And then I also have the FAR non-available articles list. So another thing that on the final rule was the Buy American, the cap on non-domestic purchases. So in the final rule, it also includes a phased-in approach to gradually reach a 5% total commercial food cost cap on non-domestic food purchases. As shown on the slide, the cap will be phased in beginning with a 10% cap in 2025-2026 school year, then moving to an 8% cap in the school year 28-29, and then finally reaching that 5% cap in school year 2030-2032, 2031-2032. State agencies will have the discretion to allow an accommodation for temporary relief from this requirement. This accommodation will be available while state agency works with the school food authority to increase their domestic purchases. And on this slide, I have the Buy American section of the final rule linked, and again, the FAR non-available articles list. And then some other changes for the Buy American. The final rule includes a few other changes related to those Buy American requirements. First, the final rule requires school food authorities to maintain documentation to demonstrate the use of one or of the two limited exceptions. So, however, these items that are on the non-available articles list, school food authorities only need to document that the product is on the list. There will be no need to further document the use of the exception beyond documenting that the product is on that list. Second, the rule requires school food authorities to include Buy American provisions in the documented procurement procedures, solicitations, and contracts for food and food products using informal and formal procurement methods and in the awarded contracts. So everybody's already doing that. Third, the rule adds the definition of substantially to the regulations for purposes of Buy American provision. And under the final rule, substantially using agricultural commodities that are produced in the United States means over 51% of the food product must consist of agricultural commodities that were grown domestically. And then finally, the rule explains in regulation how Buy American applies to fish and fish products consistent with prior USDA guidance. Farm fish must be harvested within the U.S. or any territory or possession of the U.S., and wild caught fish must be harvested within the exclusive economic zone of the U.S. or by U.S. flagged vessel. And on this slide, I have the following resources linked. I have the Buy American section of the final rule. And again, I also have that for non-available articles list. Another thing they had in the final rule was the clarification of potable water requirements. So the final rule includes a minor clarification to the potable water requirements. It means that water is safe to drink. As a reminder, schools are required to make that drinking water available and accessible without restriction to children at no charge during the school meal service. The final rule adds the word plain to the regulation to clarify that this requirement applies to plain water. However, in addition to the required plain water, schools may choose to offer water with fruits, vegetables, and herbs added if they would like to do so. And on this slide is the link to the clarification on potable water section of the final rule. And then the last thing we'll talk about today for the final rule is the removal of the synthetic trans fat specification. So the final rule removes the dietary specification prohibiting synthetic trans fats in the school lunch and school breakfast programs and in food sold to children on campus during the school day. And under this change, schools no longer need to include the trans fat in their procurement documentation, and state agencies will no longer need to review the product labels or manufacturer specifications for compliance with the trans fat dietary specification. And this change is based off of the Food and Drug Administration's actions that have effectively eliminated trans fats from the U.S. food supply, making additional regulations prohibiting trans fats in school meals unnecessary. And the resources that are linked on this slide is the trans fats section of the final rule. All right, now let's talk about the 2023 equipment grant. So back in March, March 21st to be exact, the notification of award emails were sent out. It included the amount of the grant and the detailed instructions on how to request the funding. The authorized representative and the superintendent were both included on the email. And in addition, those SFAs that were not awarded also received an email. And please note that there is always a chance of a second allocation of funds. So after the first allocations of funds are processed and distributed, if there are any unused funds, there will be a second allocation. You'll be notified at that time if you have been awarded any funds in the second allocation. Those SFAs that have been awarded must obligate funds by September 30th of 2024 by sending in a purchase order or invoice. And then you must also submit their request for reimbursement on the CMP website by October 21st, 2024. And although those are two different due dates, if possible, please submit those purchase orders or invoices and the request for reimbursement at the same time, as we cannot process for payment until both are actually received. And then to expedite that reimbursement process, you can email that purchase order or invoice for each piece of equipment that was awarded by site to Stacy Griffin, so stacy.griffin@la.gov, and then complete that online request as soon as those funds are obligated on the CMP website. If you do have any questions, you can email or call Stacy, especially if you're uncertain if your documents were received or if your reimbursement was approved. So, as we stated before, and we ran into this issue a little bit, do not begin that procurement. You should have not begun that procurement process or purchased any equipment prior to receiving that award notification. And then SFAs need to obligate those funds within 6 months of that award notification. And again, that purchase order or invoice is required as proof of obligating those funds to apply for reimbursement. So I just wanted to mention that we did receive information about the 2024 equipment grant. We are in the process of finalizing that grant award agreement. Please note, though, that for fiscal year 2024, state funding allocations are much less than 2022 and 2023 equipment grants. Louisiana was allocated only $166,137 for the 2024 equipment grant. More information will be coming out in the coming months for that. So just be on the lookout for when we finally able to send out the 2020-24 grant information. And as I said before, if you have questions about any of those equipment grants, please contact Stacy Griffin. Her email and phone number is on this screen. So now we'll go over the memos that have been posted since the last monthly call. This is a list that we had. We had quite a few, but we'll go over each one of them in detail. So first one is the memo SFS 24-82. It's actually a link to the webinar slides for the final rule that USDA had. It's basically the final rule for the meal patterns that are consistent with the dietary guidelines for Americans. That webinar was on May 9th. So on this slide is actually a link to the recording of that webinar and the slides. Memo SFS 24-83. That memo was about the May 2024 SNAP and TANF files that were loaded into eScholar Direct Match. Districts had to resolve any matches. Public schools, it was SNAP batch number 8003 and TANF batch number 8004. And the non-public schools was SNAP batch number 8006 and TANF batch number 8005. And as always, if you have issues with this, please, or you need any type of assistance, please email Jane. Memo SFS 24-84 is the state agency vended meals contract prototypes. So the vended meals contract prototypes for charter schools were not available for SFAs to utilize for the 24-25. The contract prototypes are anticipated to be available for SFAs to utilize for 25-26 school year. But for school year 24-25, SFAs are to utilize their own vended meal contract and solicitation to procure a vendor, and be sure to follow those federal, state, and local procurement requirements when doing so. SFS 24-85 is the May Medicaid free lunch and Medicaid reduced lunch files that were added to eScholar Direct Match. Public school had to resolve matches for Medicaid free lunch number 8010, Medicaid reduced 8011. The non-publics was Medicaid free was 8013 and Medicaid reduced was 8012. And again, you can email Jane if you need assistance with that. Okay, Memo SFS 24-86 was the updated tentative administrative review 5-year cycle for the 24-25 to 28-29 school years. So we had to update the tentative review 5-year review cycle on the CNP website. It has been posted under the resources under the administrative review information. And the reason is we had to make a few changes to the schedule to evenly distribute those reviews throughout the 5-year cycle. But please note that this review schedule is still subject to change because we are still awaiting USDA approval. So the backstory to this is that the Child Nutrition Program Integrity Final Rule provided states with an option to implement a 5-year school meal program AR cycle, and the option to also align the Food Service Management Company reviews with the AR cycle. And state agencies that choose to review that review cycle longer than 3 years are required to identify high-risk SFAs and provide additional oversight to those SFAs. So state agencies have to conduct a targeted follow-up review of any SFA that's designated as high risk within 2 years of the initial administrative review. And then that state agencies that review SFAs on a longer than 3-year review cycle must also develop a plan for Food Nutrition Services approval describing the criteria that will be used to designate high-risk SFAs that are subject to those targeted follow-up reviews. State agencies have to submit a plan to their regional office for review and approval that outlines that criteria that's going to be used to designate that SFA as a high risk. And as of today, we have submitted our plan, but we are still awaiting final approval from USDA. So that's why I keep saying that it's tentative, but we're hopefully in that final stages of getting approved. Memo SFS 24-87 is the July training schedule. So today, July 2nd, is the monthly call. And on Tuesday, July 30th, we will have a training on the NSLP online application at 1 o'clock via Zoom. So you can register for that on Louisiana Fit Kids website. And as always, the recording and the training slides are posted within a week of the live presentation. Memo SFS 24-88, the reduced price meals reimbursement for 23-24 school year. So, school food authorities that are currently receiving the state reimbursement from House Bill 1 for reduced price student meals need to make sure that all their claims for the 23-24 school years are submitted in the CNP system prior to July 15th in order to receive that reimbursement for those reduced price meals. And this is basically just due to the fact that the fiscal year is ending. So just make sure that you have your claims in and they've been submitted into the CNP system prior to that deadline. There's nothing additional that you have to do. You just do everything as normal. Just make sure that you have all those claims submitted in the CNP system prior to July 15th. Memo SFS 24-89 was a reminder about the CEP elections that were due on June 30th. Any LEAs that intended to elect CEP for next school year had to notify the state agency by June 30th by completing those CEP elections in the CNP website. Anybody that failed to submit by June 30th, it jeopardizes their ability to participate in CEP for 24-25 school year. But the good news is that all SFAs submitted before the June 30th deadline. So great job, everyone. Memo SFS 24-90 is the sample procurement plan for 24-25 school year. So the sample procurement plan for our next school year has been posted to the CNP website. As a reminder, this is only a sample. It can be found under the procurement section of the school food service forms. Um, Due to the recent USDA management evaluation that we had, some changes had to be made to the micro purchase, small purchase, and formal procurement thresholds on the sample procurement plan to reflect the federal requirements. So USDA is requiring a more comprehensive process for SFA's self-certification of using a higher micro-purchase threshold. So because of the revised statute, public systems can use a max of 30 for micro-purchase or 50,000 for charters. On this slide, I have the USDA memo linked that talks about the higher micro purchase threshold. And we also have the revised statute that's linked on this slide for the state regulations. So in addition to this change, SFAs, there's a self-certification that has been added to the Schedule A. So SFAs that are choosing to self-certify must prepare and include a justification for their choice, a clear indication of the threshold that they will be using, supporting documentation, and must match what they have on their procurement plan. And this is actually going to be covered in more detail on the NSLP application training that's going to take place on June 30th. The last memo is Memo SFS 24-91 is the updated forms for 2024-2025 school year. So we have the new, I say new, it's just the updated with the school years. There has been no change besides the actual school years on the forms. The CEP forms, so the CEP letter to the household and the CEP media release. And then all of your free and reduced forms, so the applications instructions in English and in Spanish, the letter to households in English and Spanish, the notice of benefits, the notice of direct certification, the prototype application in English and Spanish, the public release, and the sharing information of other programs. They can be found under the school food service forms. And if you have any additional questions or if you need any additional information, you can follow the link on the slide. It takes you to USDA's website and it has pretty much everything that's on this slide. It has all those letters and it has more information than you would ever need to know about. Also added to the CMP website have been the paid lunch equity tool and the average meal cost tool. That training happened, was that last week, I think? June 25th. That happened on June 25th, so you can refer back to those slides in that recording for more information, but those two have also been added to the CMP website. And as soon as we get the reimbursement rates for next school year, we will post those as well. Okay, so let's go over what some upcoming trainings that we have. So today, like I said, is the monthly call. And these will be posted to the Louisiana Fit Kids website soon. I don't believe they're posted yet. Um, like I said before, we will have our National School Lunch Application Training on July 30th. The August monthly call will be on August 6th. We will have an offer versus serve training on August 13th for anyone that needs that. We will also have a training on claims for reimbursement on August 20th. That is something that we're kind of looking into see some issues that we're seeing with claims. So some question and answers that we get a lot of or some common mistakes that we have. So we're putting together a claims for reimbursement training. And then we also will have a training for those of you that need it on civil rights on August 27th. So lots of training during the months of August, in addition to those back to school trainings that we'll be offering that I will go over in the coming slides. So next week, there's going to be an in-person manager training from July 8th through July 10th at Pennington. July 8th and 9th is full days worth of training from 8 to 4:30. And on July 10th, the training is going to be from 8:30 to 12, and then the assessment quiz from 1:30 to 4. Registration is $60. It's limited to 40 attendees, and registration will actually close tomorrow on July 3rd. So if you haven't registered for the training or haven't registered any of your managers for the training, please make sure you do that by tomorrow. In order to register for the training, participants must have their own email address. They must bring a laptop computer to take the assessment quiz on the 10th. And then, because that assessment quiz will be computerized and they're going to be proctored by LDOE or Pennington personnel. So back to school training, some in person. So if you're wanting LDOE staff to attend and present at your back to school trainings, please send that request to the main email address, childnutritionprograms@la.gov. We have received several requests so far. Please make sure whenever you send in that request that you specify the date, the time, and the location. We are only offering civil rights and offer versus serve right now. Trainings will be scheduled based on the availability of staff and on a first come, first served basis. And like I said, we have received several so far, and so far we are able to accommodate all of the trainings requests that we have received thus far. LDOE staff that have been assigned to your training will be reaching out to you soon to discuss details that they haven't done so already. So those of you that already sent in your request, you should be receiving emails or phone calls from LDOE staff shortly to discuss, details about the training. So save the date for an upcoming Team Up procurement training. The training will be November 19th at Pennington. For more information, we're actually going to get more information in the coming months. The Urban School Food Alliance has a cooperative agreement with USDA to provide these Team Up trainings around the country relating to procurement. And this project seeks to improve the procurement practices for districts of all sizes in both urban and rural areas. Through the review and assessment of current rules, practices, and training materials, including the expertise of stakeholders involved all along the supply chain, this project will provide school nutrition leaders with easy to use procurement tools and a voice in the process. Stakeholders across the national school lunch and school breakfast programs struggle with today's school meal procurement practices. School food authorities, producers, processors, and distributors have shared their challenges with USDA and recommended training tools and improvements to the process. This project's efforts are focused on redesigning the procurement process to put power in the hands of school nutrition program administrators, developing a process to build better partnerships with suppliers, and reinventing how school meal marketplace does business. So, for more information about this, you can actually visit the Urban School Food Alliance website that's linked on this slide. And as we get more information about this, we will definitely send it out. But I just want everybody to save that date for November 19th. And we may actually be reaching out to some school food authorities to see if they would be willing to help. I think we're trying to do like a panel, and so we may need some school food directors to be willing to volunteer to help out with that. And with that, that ends today's monthly call. I will check the chat box to see if anybody has any questions, but you can always give us a call or send us an email at the main email address, and we'll be happy to help you. So if you give me a second, I will check the chat box and get right back to you. We have a question in the chat about the important due dates for school year 24-25. We are actually working on that. I was actually working on that earlier this week. We have to hopefully have that posted soon. I would say within the next few days, that should be posted to the CNP website. At this time, I am not seeing any other questions in the chat. As always, you can give us a call at 225-342-9661, or you can email us at childnutritionprograms@la.gov. We will be sending these slides to get posted as well as the recording to Louisiana Fit Kids within the next couple of days. Just be in mind that it is 4th of July week, so there are some holidays this week, so it may not be posted till the beginning of next week, but we will try to get them posted as soon as possible. But like I said, in the meantime, please feel free to contact us. With that, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the afternoon and their holiday weekend, and we will see you on the next call. Thank you.